Clear prop.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Central here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day as always. Today's video footage comes from a training flight, and hopefully I'm going to be able to put out a good number of training flights this year, as I am trying to get 2 more ratings. I want to get my instrument as well as my commercial rating. Not sure if I'm going to be able to get those ratings this year, hopefully, but even if I don't get the ratings, I'm going to be putting in a lot of training hours toward those ratings. So today's flight is going to be focusing on instrument training, and it was quite a turbulent day. You're going to see some evidence of the wind here shortly. You see how much aileron I'm having to add in to keep the wings level on takeoff. Dip a little bit in there, and then we're going to start crabbing as we climb. And kind of the irony of flying on such a turbulent day is that I just switched over the mount on my headset to use my high definition camera, my Insta360 1R. So it's actually got a lot of built-in stabilization. It was a lot more turbulent than what you're going to experience from the camera view. The other kind of ironic thing is that I put a high definition camera on there, which means that, you know, as I watch this, I'm seeing a lot of this flight for the first time. Once I go under the foggles for instrument training, once I get to around 3,000 feet MSL, I'm actually completely blind to what's going on outside the aircraft. All I can see is the instrument panel. So I'm actually getting to enjoy the flight myself here for the first time once I get under the foggles. Anyway, let's go ahead and skip ahead to when I go under the foggles, and we'll talk more about what I'm doing. So here I'm about to put on the view limiting device, and you can see my flight instructor getting them out now. They look kind of like a pair of sunglasses, but they're actually a view limiting device, and what they do is they prevent you from seeing anything out of the windows of the aircraft, forcing you to look at the instrument panel. So I'll be switching out my sunglasses for those, and I don't know how well you could see it there, but the reason they're called foggles is the top portion of the sunglass material is fogged where you can't see through it. Kind of looks like this. This gives you a little bit of an idea of what I'm seeing through the foggles. Basically just limiting your view to the instrument panel so that you don't have any reference to the horizon outside or the terrain moving by. Forces you to use your instruments in order to keep the aircraft level, to keep your aircraft on altitude, and to make sure that you are tracking the same heading. So flying totally on instruments here. And of course you don't want to be flying with foggles unless you have some kind of safety pilot, in this case a flight instructor. And like I said, it was a very turbulent day, and it made it very difficult. To start with, I'm just getting my engine leaned out, so I've got my hand up on the throttle quadrant where I would normally have it anyway, but because of the turbulence and because of how precise I was trying to fly, maintaining altitude and all, you will see that my hand drops down to the trim for the elevator, well, the stabilator in this case. Now my airplane actually has 2 ways to trim. You see my thumb there, my left thumb. I'm actually using the electric trim. But once I get the engine stabilized where I want it, I go ahead and take my right hand and move it from the throttle quadrant down to that trim wheel, just because I can make finer adjustments right there on the trim wheel. I'm hitting the lock right there, so that locks the throttle quadrant, make sure that nothing moves. And once I'm satisfied with that, I'm going to go ahead and take my hand and drop it down to that trim wheel, which is between the 2 front seats. Now obviously I'm keeping up a good instrument scan. I'm looking at all of my flight instruments, but the 3 that I'm primarily focusing on here because of the turbulence are my altimeter, my directional gyro, and this vertical speed indicator. The thing is, with the turbulence as it was, and with the shifting wind, I was getting strong headwinds, and then they would die out, and that results in a lot of altitude change. So I was really watching my altitude closely to try and keep it within about 100 feet of my target altitude, which was not easy in these weather conditions. Vertical speed indicator, of course, just gives you a little bit of an idea if you're in a climb or descent. If it happens over time, that's going to start indicating. Perhaps you'll see that before the altimeter, although the altimeter does tend to be a bit more sensitive, so that should tell you whether you're climbing or descending as well. And then, of course, the directional gyro, just to make sure that I'm staying on course. I do have my Garmin GNX 375. That's what I'm using for navigation, but of course I'm not just flying the magenta line. I am using the DG to maintain my course. And at this point you can see that my hand has dropped down, and I'm now on that trim wheel, just making a little bit more fine correction to the pitch of the stabilator. The altimeter, of course, is going to move up and down a little bit. There's just no way around it. The only way I could have flown more stably is if the airplane had an autopilot, which it does not. That would have made my job much more easy over the 48 nautical miles that I flew on this particular flight. So I've skipped ahead a little bit here in the video. This is where we were starting to get close to the destination airport, and we chose this airport, well, frankly, because of fuel prices. Unfortunately, the airport did not have an AWOS, so in order to figure out what the winds were like down on the ground, I had to use some modern technology. Fortunately, apps like the Garmin Pilot app, which I'm using here, allow you to get an idea of what the winds are like at ground level, even at airports that don't necessarily have an AWOS system. So I made my determination there, rather than having to fly down and look at the windsock to determine, which was the best runway to land at. I can see right here that I've got 15 knot crosswind with a 5 knot headwind component landing on runway 24 here. So modern technology saves the day. So here I'm going to start my descent, and I actually stay under the foggles. We were simulating a cloud base of 2,500 feet, so once I get down to 2,500 feet MSL, I'm going to go ahead and ditch the foggles and get my sunglasses back on. It wasn't a terribly long time under the foggles or in simulated instrument conditions. I only got 4/10 in, but in all honesty, I would not want to have spent any more time than that under the foggles in these turbulent conditions. It really was a chore keeping the airplane level and keeping the altitude maintained with the turbulence being what it was. I did get 4/10 under the hood again on the way back. Of course, it was two ways, one way there, one way back. But again, if I was going to spend a long time under foggles, I would want to choose a day when I didn't have to deal with this much turbulence, because it was really a pain. So there we go, we've busted 2,500 feet, off with the foggles, back on with sunglasses, and we will rejoin for the landing. Again, lots of crosswind to deal with, and bumpy conditions bringing it in for the landing. So here I'm turning on to a nice long 3-mile final, and again, very turbulent conditions on a final approach. You'll see how I have to deal with that there. Let me know what you guys think, by the way, of this footage. This is the first time I'm using the 4K camera on my head mount. I think it looks good, but I just want to know how you guys see it on your end, so let me know in the comment section below. As you can see, my speed has dropped off quite a bit. Went from 120 knots indicated there back down to around 90, so we're almost slow enough for the approach, and I'm just going to be dragging it in here with power. You can see how much I'm having to crab into the wind to see the nose position in relation to the center line of the runway. And of course we've got flaps out now. Getting down to the approach speed finally. Gonna cross the fence at about 60, and then we'll sit it down. Now this was an interesting little airport. This was the first time I'd been here, and they actually don't have a taxiway, so you do have to back taxi the runway. And I wasn't quite sure where the fuel was. I saw a little fuel pump outside that hangar there with the blue aircraft that you saw. However, that's not actually where the fuel is, but I did stop in there to ask the folks who were there where the fuel was, and just to take a look. When I pull up to that hangar, you will see right out front there's a CJ-6 in the front of the hangar getting worked on. That airplane is going to be up for sale apparently fairly soon, so if you're in the market for a CJ-6, there will be one in the South Carolina area coming up for sale shortly. They also, which you won't see it in the video necessarily, but they also had a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous Beech 18 in the back of that hangar, and they'll be getting that flying as well at some point. But I think that was the first time I think I've seen a Beech 18 in real life, and I got to get right up close to it and take a look. Didn't take any photos, unfortunately, but you know, I just didn't feel real comfortable taking photos. Obviously, I wasn't an invited guest. The folks there were real friendly and let us see all their cool toys, but I didn't want to freak them out by pulling out a camera, so I didn't do that. Now, the runway here was not particularly long compared to what I'm used to in my area, but apparently it was even shorter at some time. You can see the chevrons here. It looked like at one point in time it must have had some sort of displace threshold, but that has subsequently been painted over, and the runway has essentially been extended. So I think I'll let the footage play at least long enough for you to see the front of that CJ-6. They did have the cowling off, and it has an upgraded engine. It has a Russian engine as opposed to the Chinese engine that it comes with, producing about 400 horsepower. It's the same engine that is used in the Pitts Model 12. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought of the video in the comment section below. And of course, if you want to make sure that you don't miss any future videos, do follow me on Utreon. The link to that will be in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed. That's all I've got for you today. Do the likes and the comment thing below, and I will catch you guys later.